My name's Patrick Hayes and I'm reporting for WORLDbytes. I'm here on a rainy day in Newport in the Isle of Wight, outside the Vestas wind turbine factory. About a month ago, the workers all found out that they were about to be made redundant. So we have 500 workers in one of the largest industries in the Isle of Wight about to lose their jobs. So both the Isle of Wight and the workers themselves face a very uncertain future. But 20 of the workers have now actually occupied the first floor of the Vestas factory and are refusing to leave until their demands are met. Now their demands, as we see here, are save Vestas, save jobs. But the unique element, as some are arguing here, is save the planet. I'm here today to find out what does or does not make this situation unique.
Well, two things have inspired me. One is that this government's supposed to be demonstrating a commitment to being greener and to green jobs, and clearly that isn't happening with the proposed closure of this plant. So that's one thing. And the other thing is just in the case of workers losing their jobs when this company is still making a profit, and then sourcing the work out or setting up elsewhere just seems ludicrous to me. The government should nationalise. They absolutely should. They've just announced measures in relation to their commitment to being more green and to renewables, and this just flies in the face of that completely.
So you live locally in the Isle of Wight?
I live on the island, yes.
And how long have you worked at the factory?
I've been at the factory for 3 years. A couple of people that were in there have been here 5-8 years or more. They stand to lose a lot if everything goes wrong, but they do believe that it's worth saving their jobs. I'm still in contact with a couple of the lads that are in there. The point they're trying to get across is that we're not getting enough support from our government about these jobs. I mean, the government say they're going to put all this money into green energy, and the only green energy company in the UK that's making blades, they don't give enough support to. Vestas have made it blatantly clear they don't want to be in Northern Europe anymore, so we're trying to do what we can to keep our jobs, really.
So it's quite unusual because a lot of people are being made redundant at the moment. It's actually quite unusual for people to stand up and say, we're not going to have this, we're actually going to take things into our own hands. What inspired people to do that here?
The fact that it's for a good cause. I mean, green energy is always a good cause. Like I said, we want to keep our jobs. It's a good paid job, well, very well paid job for the island, and well, if we can keep our jobs, then everyone would be a lot happier.
A lot of other industries, for example British Airways, where a lot of people are losing their jobs at the moment. Do you think it's important to also defend their jobs?
Well, I would say it is quite special for the green jobs because it's trying to help the planet as well. But anyone that's being made redundant, I do feel sorry for them. It's not nice for anyone.
It's not only that they love their job, they really believe in perhaps green energy for the future. They believe that, I mean, Vestas is the highest paid employment on the island and it's the biggest. So I feel that a lot of people don't want to see the Isle of Wight just completely ruined, as well as, green energy just completely bashed, because without us, unfortunately the UK probably won't have any wind turbines. We build all the blades here, and it was basically the old technology that we were using, and the reason the factory was closing down is because they didn't see a market in the new technology and they didn't want to transfer over to the new stuff, which is unfortunately I don't think is true, because if Gordon Brown keeps saying I'm going to put X amount of money into the government for green energy, then why are we closing down? I think that's pretty much what, it's not just about the loss of our jobs, it's about why the government keep lying to us. Why, if you feel so strongly about this, why can you not keep us open?
My job at the factory is I'm a blade manufacturer. I actually make the wind turbines. I'm involved in the construction of them, and the conditions are close, and the feeling between management and its employees isn't the best. It's perceived to be a dictatorship. And the management's attitude to its employees has been said to us on many occasions, if you don't like it, you know where the door is, there's 600 other people want your job. And as workers, we do understand that there are other people that want our jobs, but all we want is fair conditions to work in, fair treatment by the management. We feel we are getting very good pay, we aren't disputing that fact, but we feel that the treatment we get as human beings is far from fair.
So this isn't organised by a union, this is very much prompted by the workers at Vestas deciding to take matters into their own hands.
As time was drawing ever closer, we realised that something had to happen. We realised that things weren't as rosy as we all thought. We've all applied for jobs. For instance, there was a advert in the paper recently for 3 positions and it had 800 applicants.
Right.
That was a job which paid a similar wage to this on the island. And people are now realising that the jobs aren't out there. They are realising that if they do want to stay in employment, they are going to have to look further afield, which means moving off the island. There are a lot of people that come to the island specifically for what it has to offer, which is a much slower pace of life, a much calmer and more tranquil setting, and you're never more than 10 miles from the sea, and that's why people move here. And now it's just like, now you've got to go and move somewhere else because there isn't the employment here. Now we're in a situation like this, and people have realised that the economic situation on the island is very bleak indeed. There are around 130,000 occupants on this small island. There are about 3,000 to 3,500 people unemployed. You're going to add a further 600 to it at the end of the month. You know, it doesn't take a mathematician to work out that that is not a good situation to be in. It's very bleak for the island economy because a lot of our business is based on tourism. So come the end of the season, the numbers of unemployed will start to increase again. And on an island as small as this, you need large companies to stay here, especially ones which are making a profit. The island is known as a low-wage area, and it is known as a government unemployment black spot, which is why the government have granted us a redeployment fund of £3,000 each per worker for short-term training, so as to enable us to get more jobs on the island. But it's a very small island. There are very large repercussions. It won't just affect the 600 workers here. It's those 600 workers, I'd say, on average, half of them have families. So that will affect the schools. Then that will then in turn affect the local businesses because people just won't have the money to spend. So you'll end up with businesses with no investment in them, and then that will lead to more job losses. Thank you.
So there are some people, Steve, who are saying that this is actually different to, for example, the Vistian occupation earlier on in the year, because these are green jobs, and that the government needs to make a special case because they're promising for more green jobs for the economy. And it's a bit odd that Ed Miliband, for example, the other day was talking up the idea of another 1 million green jobs, and these ones are closing down at the same time. Do you think there is something, you know, special about this situation, or do you think that all workers, when faced with this situation, should also, you know, take a leaf out of your book, really?
Yes, that's a very interesting question you pose there. What I would say is, we do understand that people say about climate change, about how it's affecting the climate of the country and the world and that, and there are people that do believe and people that don't believe it. But when people like the government turn around and say that we are going to invest in green jobs, we are going to make sure that the technology and the money gets invested into creating them, it does sort of make everybody stand back and think, is this a government that actually knows what it's doing when it's allowing a factory that is already up and running, making wind turbines in a green industry? And this is exactly what the government want. We don't understand why they're turning around and saying, actually, we're not going to do anything to save it.
Do you think you should differentiate in terms of the type of job people do when faced with these kind of redundancies?
Everybody facing redundancy should and is entitled to fight for their jobs. And I would advise everybody never to give up. Never give up. Always fight, because you never know. If you don't ask, you will never get. With regards to coal-fired power stations, they are seen as old technology and they are seen as polluting technology. They do have this carbon recovery system coming online relatively soon, and for a power station to be involved in that, it would be seen as fruitful for the government to save its jobs. With regards to an older one, I wouldn't like to make a comment on that because every situation is individual and every situation is full of individuals as well. Everybody takes a job for their own personal reasons. There are a lot of people within the company that take it for the climate change reason.
Yeah.
There are a lot of other people in the company that take it for what it is.
Yeah.
A highly paid job in a poor employment area.
It's really the tie-in that this has with the huge threat that the world faces from the catastrophic destabilisation of global climate, and it's, this brings it down to, a kind of relatively understandable people level. If you sit with people who really understand the science and know about it, and you're talking with them for a while, you end up feeling like you're in a different world to everybody else. You end up in like the whole world is looking down the barrel of a gun. That's what it feels like when you're talking with those people. And then you go out of that room into the normal world, if you like, and then everything is like in a different world, because everybody is going out to business as usual, and you want to say, fuck, we should all be building loads of windmills and stuff as fast as we can because, the ice caps are disappearing and you can see the world changing around us, and it's not going to stop there, and we don't know what's going to happen, but probably millions of people will be starving to death because we won't be able to produce enough food and so on. I think that at least maybe it's an opportunity to put a little bit of that kind of, maybe I shouldn't use the word panic, but concern, but more than concern that we're feeling, and put some of the energy that there should be, that the government should be galvanising society with, to actually do something to deal with this crisis. It doesn't look like economic growth can go ad infinitum. None of the figures work for that, do you know what I mean? So you have to think of other ways of improving the quality of life and so on, for a start, rather than, they don't just involve producing more stuff. What I mean to say is that at the moment we're in a race that it looks like we're losing against sort of global meltdown. What you do if you need to do stuff really fast is what you can do easily, which is just stop producing stuff. I mean, I tend to think wartime. Then the government makes one hell of a big effort to explain to everybody why they have to pull together and stuff. But it's also the kind of signal they send out. They had rationing. They didn't say, please don't eat too much, like please turn the lights off or whatever. They said, you've got to do it. And it was, rationing was the same for everybody. That's another thing.
I think, people's jobs are important. Obviously, people have got their families to support and roofs to keep over their heads, food to keep on the table. But from the point of view of the environment, if we don't make a stand somewhere, then where do we end 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now?
So do you think this is a stand in terms of trying to save the planet here?
I think you've got to make lots of little stands along the way. No one big action's going to solve it. Anything from the second runway at Heathrow to this to... there's any number of actions we need to be taking.
I guess one of the things that I've heard people say is that, for example, around the runway at Heathrow, that actually there could be lots of jobs lost if a lot of the campaigning is actually successful. So, for example, at the King's North Power Station or Heathrow, how would you respond to those kind of criticisms?
Well, this is the flip side, but at the same time, yes, you'd be losing jobs at King's North, you'd be potentially losing jobs at Heathrow. But at the same time, if you go and put all this money into a green economy, then all of a sudden you're creating thousands and thousands of new jobs.
When this country went to war in the Second World War, the government effectively took over and ran the industry in order to make as many weapons as possible as fast as possible, kill as many people as possible, win the war. We want the same, but to save life. And if you look at it, they used to, up until 2 years ago, they said they couldn't spend the money, they couldn't take over the companies. Now we're saying very simply here, what the Workers' Insider is saying is we want to be treated like Northern Rock.
In the Isle of Wight, the local, I understand the local population have actually protested against the building of wind turbines here. I think largely because they're an eyesore, etc. That does seem to be a problem, that there is almost an environmentalist conservationist movement against the installation of a lot of the turbines here. And what's your view on that?
My view on that is there's more than one kind of environmentalist. For me, climate change is an issue like famine and war. It's going to lead to famine and war. You don't ask whether the solutions are beautiful. You ask whether they're going to save lives. And that's my feeling here. But the other thing is, it really is only really quite rich people who worry about windmills, and they worry about the values of their houses. In the Second World War, there was rationing. There were a lot of things people didn't have. People didn't have petrol, they didn't have nylons, but everybody had a job. and everybody thought they were fighting for the same thing. Where people feel that they have to give something up, but it's shared, everybody gives it up.
Travelling back from the Isle of Wight and writing up my reports, the rather tragic nature of the protests struck home. Climate change activists want to support clean workers, but not dirty workers. Should people's jobs and livelihoods be determined by environmental concerns? Should the interests of the planet, whether real, exaggerated or imagined, trump the indisputably real interests of communities who want to keep their jobs and live fuller, richer, more materially wealthy lives? As one of the Vestas workers said to me, a lot of the people working here have got families, mortgages, they're going to lose their houses. And that is why they should be supported, not because they're saving the planet or because they're better than other workers, but on the universal basis that people should have access to work and live full, comfortable lives. Although it's understandable the Vestas workers have tried to play the green cards to keep their jobs during a recession when thousands of others are losing theirs, the events at Vestas suggest it may be a losing card to play. Marking yourself out as a more important, cleaner, superior worker due to the job you do is not going to win wider solidarity. The workers at Vestas and the small numbers of workers who have gone on strike elsewhere in Britain want more. Environmentalists, sadly, always seem to want less.